Salut, soyez bienvenue au nouveau vidéo. This is the introduction to the conditionnel. I'll throw in a couple more advanced things, but again, get out your notes, take the notes, and remember this is supposed to be an introduction with a few flares, like normal. Conditionnel is technically this mood, but it's not so much this mode anymore. It's more like a ton verbal or its usage, and you're going to see what I mean in a little bit. You've already seen three verbs in particular probably used in this, and it shows just in those how much the meaning can change because it gives it that shoulda, coulda, woulda sense. Would, right? So instead of I have to, I must, I should. I can, I could. I want, I would like, and it's this, it softens that meaning and allows for a much more rich communication. Okay, so formation, c'est très simple. You already know the future simple. So you take that future simple stem, which is the infinitive with ending in R. And yes, there are a few irregulars, but what, 20 or less or something like that? And then you just add the imperfect endings. Et. So j'aurais, jouerai, jouerai, jouerions, joueriez et jouer. Jouerai, wow. So c'est très simple. What might not be simple is the passé de conditionnel, and some of you would love to see this. So I'm just showing if you don't need it, ignore it. Go to the next slide. But avoir, être is then going to be your auxiliary verb still, just like the passé composé, but you're going to only need to put them in the conditionnel and of course, have the imperfect endings, and then the past participle. So, I would have played, j'aurais joué. C'est super simple. I think your book talks about conditional in just these ways, but I'm not really a fan of that exactly. I like lists, and I kind of want to get into it a little bit more. So, for example, polite requests are very important. Your book does cover those. And let's take a look at what those look like. Pourriez-vous me passer le popcorn? Not pass me the popcorn, but could you pass me the popcorn? Or, je voudrais un peu de tequila dans mon jus d'orange, instead of, I want. So, I want you to be very cautious when you go to France, because in France, whenever you go to a store, a restaurant, they're expecting a lot more politesse than we would normally do in the United States, and it's very important. So, what's your step here? You're going to say bonjour when you enter, and you're going to say monsieur, madame, and you're going to use the conditional form, and you'll get the better service. Ça va? Okay, advice. You know, we all have that friend we want to give advice to, but we don't want to say you have to. We want to say, oh, you could, you should, or if I were you, I would do this. You're going to use some conditional there. So, bonne, tu fais de l'exercice, mais tu devrais aussi manger mieux. Bonne, desires, wishes, we've all said, oh, I'd love to. Notice would, I would love to, because that conditional is a lot of that would. I would love to go to France pour pratiquer mon français. Bonne, and who wouldn't want to go? C'est super. Conditional is also for blaming, and I'm not sure if you're like me, but if I come home to this, I'm like, tu aurais pu faire une vaisselle, you know, because you're just like, ah. Anyway, also for expressing regret. Maybe you've given your kids too much sugar and your house turned out like this. Tu aurais, je n'aurais pas dû donner du sucre aux enfants. Notice this is the conditional passé, oui, conditionnel du passé. Because, you know, I should not have done it. So when you're giving it regret, it's something that you can't exactly change right now. So you're going to be using the passé of this. And notice that's just the auxiliary verb in the conditional form with a past participle. C'est super facile. Reporting, you're going to see this with reported events that have not been verified, or example, haven't occurred before. So if a tornado touched down, il y aurait plusieurs victimes, you don't know for sure, you haven't maybe checked the exact number, but or maybe you don't know exactly who exactly it is. You heard maybe it was a man and a dog, but it's really unknown right now. Then again, you're going to be using the conditionnel. Similarly with la température, because if you're saying what should occur because of what you learned as a meteorologist, it's not confirmed yet. So, la température monterait à partir de lundi. We don't know yet. It hasn't yet occurred. But the big thing every textbook wants to test you on is si clauses, which is basically hypothetical situations with if-then situations. And it's got a couple simple rules, but it can seem complicated at first. So there are three main types of clauses, of is-then clauses. And the reason why I'm breaking it down into three, and how most books will break it down into three, is because it helps you kind of solidify that a little bit in your brain. There are likely situations, unlikely situations, and impossible situations. And you can see how the tense tells you that it's likely or unlikely. So, for example, in English, let's do this. In English, if we have if and then a present tense, we know, okay, so this can happen now. And then our then statement can say, well, so if this happens right now, then this happens, or then this future will happen, or if this thing right now happens, then do this. Okay, so notice this is all very possible. It's all in the present. It's gonna happen, right? Or very likely. There's also, exemple. There's an example of each one. Oh, okay. Donc, si je ne dois pas travailler dimanche, j'irai au bar. So, if I do not work right now, I will go to the bar. Now, the other one, the one that our books always test us on, or want to make sure that we understand, is that if the if has an imparfait, then the other clause, the then part of the clause, that's going to have the conditionnel. So the part about this that I find a little bit tricky for students is that in my mind, an unlikely situation that I would say in English would be something like, if I won, if I won $1 million, I would go there. And I don't even think that won as past. Like, this is like, in my mind, it seems futuristic. Like, if I were to win, it's not possible. But that's the imperfect. And I think that was the hardest for my brain to wrap around, that I'm going to use if as in perfect, and then the conditionnel. And that means that it's not likely, but it's still possible. And it's just really hard because I'm thinking of that if I win $1 million, I will do these things. But it's the way it is en français. And notice the if part here, si je gagnais beaucoup d'argent, that's the imperfect, and the second half is then in the conditional. Now I could switch those clauses. I could put the conditional clause in front and then the if and the imperfect. But as you will notice on this lovely chart, the if part cannot have the conditional, because the if is not conditional. Okay, it is that base, okay, of events that you're saying, well, if this does happen, if this were to happen, if this had happened, then these things would occur. Okay, so that second half is the part that can have the conditional if it's in the imperfect or the plus que parfait. Okay, the last thing we were going to talk about is plus que parfait plus the conditionnel. That plus que parfait we haven't exactly talked about, but it's like, if this were to have happened, then this would happen. So if I wouldn't have met my husband, I'd probably still be living in France. Or maybe I probably wouldn't even have gone to France. Whoa. So those things are not likely to happen. They can't happen because that if then, if this thing would have had happened, super past, which it hasn't, so the then is not possible because it didn't occur. Okay, I have a couple extra examples of each of these. Like, what does it look like with the present and the present? So then the if clause with the regular present, what that looks like. I also have it with the present and the future, so you can see what these all look like, as well as present and the imperative. So if you can, come see me. I also, I think, put an example of, yes, more of those imperfect and conditional, because those are the ones that your books want to test you on. So, si j'avais le temps, je le ferais. If I had the time, I would do it. Now, it's still possible that I'll get the time, but it's not likely. Then, I also have some more examples of that lovely third condition, the it's a very impossible situation with the plus que parfait. Si j'avais eu le temps, je l'aurais fait. If I had the time, I would have done it. But I didn't have the time. It isn't done. It's not possible. So, in a nutshell, these are the ifs. You can either have present, imperfect, and plus que parfait. And on tests, they like to have that if clause available, and then you probably have a blank on the second half for the then clause, and it asks you which of these tenses do you need. And so if you can memorize present with present and future, because it's likely, now, imparfait with the conditionnel, awesome, and you probably won't be tested on the plus que parfait and the passé de conditionnel right now, but it's very fun. Especially useful when talking about those regrets. And again, with regrets, these are the usages that you're going to see the conditionnel, making things sound more polite. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. Advice. Oh, you could, you should. Not, you can, so you have to. As well as, blaming you're going to hear a lot. Probably, or at least, if you're in a family, you probably will. And, of course, in the journals, the newspapers. Formation, like I said before, c'est super simple. It's just your future stem with your imperfect endings. And even the passé is super simple. It's like passé composé, but with the first auxiliary part as conditionnel. Okay, so if you want more practice after having reviewed this information, I have some examples that you could try to translate right now. You could pause the video, write them down, en français, because in 1 second, I'm going to show you the answers. Voilà. Well, I hope that was helpful. If you si vous avez des questions, laisse-moi savoir. C'est pourquoi je suis là.